Is inhaled sedation a good option for patients with ARDS? When should clinicians initiate vasopressin for patients with septic shock? Medicare versus Medicare Advantage, and much more on this episode of the JAMA Editor's Summary. Hello, and welcome to our listeners around the world. Today is Friday, March 21st, 2025. I'm JAMA Deputy Editor Dr. Linda Brubaker, sitting in for the Editor-in-Chief, Dr. Kirsten Bibbins-Domingo. I'm joined today by JAMA Deputy Editor Dr. Preeti Malani. Hi, Preeti. Let's get started.
Hi, Linda. This week, JAMA published a cluster of critical care articles for the International Symposium on Intensive Care and Emergency Medicine meeting in Brussels. First up, a research article by Dr. Jaboudan and colleagues. The CSAR trial compares inhaled sevoflurane with intravenous propofol for sedation for patients with ARDS. Investigators reported patients given sevoflurane had fewer ventilator-free days, fewer intensive care unit-free days, and had higher mortality rates. The authors concluded these findings do not support a strategy of inhaled sedation with sevoflurane in this patient group.
Well, that's really informative. There's also an insightful editorial by Dr. Venkatesh and colleagues who spoke with JAMA Deputy Editor Dr. Kristen Walter about the trial on the JAMA Author Interviews podcast.
Do you think that further research into inhaled sedation for patients with ARDS is warranted?
I think that's a very, very important question. There are currently 2 trials of isoflurane sedation which are in progress, and they will inform the discussion further. The question about had the sevoflurane been used for shorter periods of time, would that have, in people who received sevo for, say, 2 days or 3 days, were the outcomes any different as compared to those who received for longer duration? And that is something that will come out in the secondary analyses. But our conclusion was that there's certainly prolonged sedation in this particular case based on a 7-day duration was not something we would recommend in ARDS.
JAMA also published a study looking at when to initiate vasopressin for patients with septic shock who are already receiving norepinephrine. Dr. Kalamutu and colleagues used 4 large independent data sets for the OVIS reinforcement learning study. The reinforcement learning model recommended initiation of vasopressin more frequently, sooner, at lower norepinephrine dose, and at lower organ failure score compared with the average observed actions of clinicians. When vasopressin was initiated similarly to the reinforcement learning model recommendations, patients had statistically significant reduced in-hospital mortality.
JAMA published 3 viewpoints this week. Dr. Casalino and colleagues wrote a viewpoint about the Medicare Advantage trap, in which they discuss the difficulties beneficiaries can face when switching from Medicare Advantage to traditional Medicare. They include examples of possible reform ideas and even some current practices that help mitigate challenges when switching from Medicare Advantage to traditional Medicare. In another JAMA viewpoint, Drs. Grill and Rabinovici wrote about the recently published book, Doctored: Fraud, Arrogance, and Tragedy in the Quest to Cure Alzheimer's, which alleges 4 examples of scientific misconduct in Alzheimer's disease research. However, the JAMA Viewpoint authors argue that the book contributes to a false narrative that threatens public trust in well-supported ongoing Alzheimer's disease research, such as the amyloid cascade hypothesis and amyloid plaque-lowering monoclonal antibodies. JAMA also published a viewpoint by Dr. Mello and Professor Cohn in which they reflect on the regulatory landscape for AI in healthcare. They inform JAMA readers about the FDA's role in AI regulation and discuss other players who could provide additional oversight to ensure the safety of AI tools in the healthcare space.
That's a great set of viewpoints this week, Linda. In addition, JAMA published 2 articles in the Climate Change and Health series this week. Dr. Hurtalendi and colleagues contributed a perspective article in which they highlight Kaiser Permanente, Southern California's response efforts during the recent West Coast wildfires. These authors proposed ways that the medical community can implement standardized crisis response protocols to prepare for wildfires and other environmental disasters. In their JAMA Insights article, Dr. Levinson and colleagues discuss how surgical teams can work to improve environmental health. They provide 5 actions that team members can take pre, intra and postoperatively to reduce carbon emissions.
Those are certainly topics all clinicians should know about. JAMA's clinical content also features a review on chronic myeloid leukemia. Doctors Jabbour and Kantarjian provide a systematic review on the pathogenesis, diagnosis, and treatment of this myeloproliferative neoplasm. You can listen to a deeper discussion on the related JAMA Clinical Reviews podcast. Doctors Koselitz and Seymour describe the use of point-of-care ultrasound in their interesting JAMA Insights manuscript. They review focused cardiac ultrasound, which is particularly helpful for hemodynamic profiling in patients with septic shock. JAMA has a related video of the focused cardiac ultrasound. It's very helpful to see the scan.
Yes, I agree. Let's also let our listeners know about the latest manuscript in JAMA's Communicating Medicine series. Dr. Kravitz contributed a JAMA Insights article in which he describes negotiating with patients about tests, referrals, and treatments. He includes a table with examples of clinician responses that can help foster successful patient interactions. And speaking of communicating, JAMA just released an informative video on the role of genome sequencing in patient diagnosis with helpful information from medical experts and a perspective from an involved family. Clinicians and patients alike may find this video useful to aid understanding of a complex topic in medicine.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that one, Preeti. Let's also highlight the JAMA Med News article by Avery Orell, who reports on a recent Kaiser Family Foundation poll about the public's trust in artificial intelligence. The recent poll provides insights into demographics using AI and which AI-derived topics are the most trusted by users. And while we're on the topic of AI, I also wanted to mention the JAMA article by Nora Collins about an interview with Dr. Christakis about how AI can promote inclusive health. Dr. Christakis is the editor-in-chief of JAMA Pediatrics and the chief health officer for the Special Olympics International. Here's a clip from JAMA Associate Editor Dr. Yulin Swen's interview of Dr. Christakis on the related JAMA plus AI Conversation podcast.
Can you elaborate on the motivations behind writing this article and any experiences that inspired this?
Yeah, thanks. As you mentioned, I've been the chief health officer now at Special Olympics for about 15 months. And before that, I've been a professor of pediatrics. I've taken care of clinical patients, including people with IDD, but I haven't really been immersed in the challenges that that special population faces in accessing healthcare. And one of the things we've been doing in Special Olympics Health is screening our athletes for health issues. And I should point out that our athletes range in age from 2 to 80. So it's not purely a pediatric problem. And making referrals as needed for everything from obesity, hypertension, hearing, vision, et cetera, to their primary care providers. And what we find, and what predated my starting there, was that patients weren't following up. Our follow-up rate was very, very low, even for urgent problems, which we identify about 7% of the time, problems that we feel need to be seen within 2 weeks at the latest. And what we were hearing from our athletes was that they don't find the experience of going to their doctor particularly welcoming. And I should point out that there are many challenges that people with IDD have in accessing their physician, including, frankly, reimbursement and physicians' willingness to see them. But the most disconcerting thing was to hear from them that they find their visits to be unsatisfying.
JAMA covered quite the spectrum of clinical content this week. Thanks so much, Preeti. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to hear what's new at JAMA this week. These highlights were brought to you by Dr. Preeti Malani and me, Dr. Linda Brubaker. This episode was produced by Daniel Morrow, Shelly Steffens, and Dr. Krista Roberts at the JAMA Network. A link to this JAMA content can be found in the episode's show notes. To follow this and other JAMA Network podcasts, please visit us online at jamanetworkaudio.com. And thank you for listening.
This content is protected by copyright by the American Medical Association with all rights reserved, including those for text and data mining, AI training, and similar technologies.